Is the heart of it, about 15 slides, is actually about the trip. We generally have those just be photo slides, and somebody like Jim or myself will say, this is the first section of your trip, this is what you can look forward to doing in this section, and we kind of divide it into sections. So in terms of all the time I spend on it, it's actually not that much. The same amount of time you spend on making a PowerPoint is the same amount of time you can do to make a webinar, because you're really just making a PowerPoint presentation, and then you just have to kind of make sure the guest speaker knows what visuals are you going to be using so they know what they need to talk about. And so we just prep them on that. So I would say it's only a few hours. PowerPoint probably takes the longest, and we go back and forth with guest speakers and our partners on what the actual content in terms of what we're speaking about. So it's basically just a PowerPoint presentation with the additional awesomeness of the above.
Right, and I would say that there is a bit of lead time that you need to plan for, so that while it may not take a month of your time, you should definitely plan in lead time depending on how you're going to market the invitation. If you're going to use, NPCA's Convio tool to send a blast email to a target segment of people, you need to figure out, who's the target segment? Do they exist in Convio? Can you access them? Can you segment them? Can you get into the message stream for that? So all the usual things you would do for messaging, you should layer into this and build in the lead time for any of those sorts of invitational tools, be it email blast, Facebook, those sorts of things that you're going to use. Just make sure you're planning enough lead time for those things. Don't say, wow, let's do a webinar, tomorrow, and think that you'll get lots of attendance, because you want to certainly market it, invite people. And I would say that we've sent out invitations
usually about 2 weeks before.
Yeah, and get a pretty good response based off of that time frame.
Right, so our current marketing model is that about 2 weeks before the webinar, we'll email whatever list we've selected. We also usually work with Megan on getting us onto Facebook, either 1 or maybe 2 posts. Usually one when we launch the email, and then one about a day before, saying, last chance to register for the webinar. Because again, the key is you don't want people trying to register like 5 minutes before. You want them to register so you can get a good idea of how many people you have. So in the case of Yellowstone, we had to up our numbers. We knew that ahead of time and not 5 minutes before the presentation was going to start. So yes, lead time is important. I don't really think about that as much because I just kind of do it.
I think these are really good questions, but we are probably running a little short on time for questions. So maybe we can see if there's one last question in the room and one last question through the computers or phones.
We have one from Theo, nothing in the room.
All right, go for it.
Tracy would like to know where she can find a list of the features of GoToWebinar and Adobe Connect.
You can find them in this PowerPoint. Aside from that, I'm not sure. I'm sure that in their sales for both of those tools, the features exist. But
when we were originally looking at it, GoToWebinar has a pretty, or GoToMeeting, the company, has a pretty robust website which talks about how you can use these various tools. So, Katie and I walked into this, had no idea how to formulate a poll or a survey or the correct registration stuff. So the GoToMeeting website was very helpful in terms of Adobe Connect. I would say talk to somebody in CPM because they seem to really know Adobe Connect like the back of their hand. But I'm sure Adobe Connect has an awesome sales team as well.
Maybe you buy them a coffee or something.
Any questions in the room? Any more questions from the field? All right, so I think we're moving on to the brainstorm time.